All right, everyone, welcome into episode 132 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports, the only sports broadcast that talks about both American and Brazilian sports here on the very last night of May 31st, 2024, in 3 short hours here in the East Coast of the U.S. It'll be June. We're almost halfway through the year of 2024. I am Nick Hill, live as always from Chattanooga, Tennessee, from a turbulent United States of America. And joining me from Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, is Gus Tomazeli. Gus, how are you doing on this Friday evening?
I'm doing good. I'm good. In a cold-ish Brazil, I know you had the debate that why you can consider cold weather for Brazilian standards. It is for American standards, maybe not. But doing
Right.
good, doing good. In this calm Friday night, at least here in Brazil.
Oh, for sure. Sure. By the way, 62 degrees, y'all, is not cold. But I digress. But I guess it is cold for the tropical climates of South America. But as you can see, Gus wearing his Power T pull over here. It is opening night of the NCAA baseball tournament here in the United States. And our beloved Volunteers, the SEC regular and tournament season champion and number one overall seed. Some people needed to hear that again. SEC regular season champion, especially for some folks in Kentucky, especially needed to hear that. And number one seed. Um, they are playing Northern Kentucky right now, the Norse of the Horizon League, same conference that a certain Wright State is in. Um, a team that's infamous in Tennessee baseball lore. Thankfully, so far, it looks like that Tennessee will not, hopefully, will not have to be in a similar dramatic position in this game. They are up 6-2 in the top of the sixth inning here, and they might be getting close to finishing off the top of the sixth as the Volunteers are doing a really good job. Also, want to note that the Edmonton Oilers have just scored the first goal of a game against the Dallas Stars in Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals of the Stanley Cup. We'll get into that here in just a little bit. But we'll start off here with some NCAA baseball with our base balls, as we love to call them. And it looks like they're going to end the inning, or in the top of the inning, rather, right here. So we're going to go to the bottom of the sixth. So, guys, just, based off what you've seen tonight, just kind of what is your reaction here to the start of this tournament here for Tennessee against Northern Kentucky, and just kind of how they've gotten to here, winning the SEC. And we talked about last week, how important the SEC tournament really was. I personally kind of wanted them to lose a little early just to get some rest, but hey, they just kept winning and they won the entire thing. So, do we think that's going to have any sort of detriment to them? Do you, or they're going to just keep moving right along here, winning
I mean,
here?
so far has not affected in any way. Taking care of business, of course. Northern Kentucky, uh, uh, on paper, is the weakest of the teams in this regional, but it's good to take care of business. I mean, uh, like practically a sellout crowd at Lindsey Nelson Stadium, so the fans are really excited about this game. But you know, I guess Tennessee is doing what was expected from them, taking care of business and having no trouble, so far against Northern Kentucky.
I think what's interesting so far, when you look at how this game has been managed from Tony Vitello's perspective, he started, I forget his name, but Stamos, and he gave up a home run to the very first batter. And he just was struggling hard in the top of the first inning, and he pulled him. He pulled him with just one out in the top of the first. He put in Casey, and Casey is still in the game. He has now pitched 6 innings in a row. He's up to 98 pitches now, and has effectively acted like the starter in this game, which is really interesting. And I think the one thing that you can perhaps criticize Vitello for over the years is perhaps maybe leaving pitchers in a little too long in certain situations, and maybe it's one or two of those moments each year that's prevented Tennessee from winning a national championship.
He pulled up a strategy that in Major League Baseball we saw with the Tampa Bay Rays, that pulling up pitchers very early on in the game. Of course, the Rays used the reliever as a starter, and then pulling early, and then effectively putting the starting pitcher by the second and third inning. But the Vitello, you know, I think he's so connected with this team. He feels when he has to make changes, when he has to make tough decisions, like the one he did tonight, and so far has worked.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, the offense has come to play as they always do. 6 runs. And yeah, the first 3 runs, they kind of had the effort, especially there. I believe it was the third inning. They had one walked in when the bases were loaded, and they had to get one in via sac fly. And I think that's another key for the ball throughout this tournament, too. I think at times we've become over reliant on the home run ball over the years. I think, especially the team 2 years ago, 2022, which was just such an exciting team. They could hit so many home runs every night. But then we run into that Notre Dame team who was able to keep the ball inside the yard, and we just couldn't find other ways to manufacture runs. And our friend Jason Wyrick has said this numerous times. If you're going to win the World Series, you have to manufacture runs in multiple ways. And I was glad to see us manufacture runs in different ways. Now, Billy Amick, a.k.a. Billy Barrels, did come in and drop a 3-run bomb in the bottom of, I believe, the 5th. But still, this team has proven they can score in different ways, which will be huge against tougher competition.
Yeah, and I remember interviewing Vertello, and he always point out that in baseball, what is important is to keep scoring. Doesn't matter how. So that's a great point about manufacturing runs, and Tennessee so far has created a very comfortable lead that is able to give some cushion.
Oh, for sure. So hopefully they're able to finish off this game here. 6-2, bottom of the 6th. We'll keep an eye on it. Now, the winner of this game, assuming that it is the Volunteers, they'll take on Indiana. Indiana took care of Southern Miss earlier today, 10-4, which is kind of surprising to me. Southern Miss, is a team that we played last year in the Super Regionals. We had to travel to Hattiesburg, which was a point of controversy last year. But we walked in with a coach retiring, with one of the best players in baseball, that Dickerson guy. And we went in and won. We went in and found a way to advance to Omaha in Hattiesburg. And it'll be kind of a bit weird if we don't get to see Southern Miss at all in this tournament.
I mean, they have to play a do or die game, I guess, against Northern Kentucky so far. I mean, if the Vols, keep and maintain this lead, so, but I guess the matchup everybody was looking forward to, it might not happen.
Right. And just for, we're paired with the Greenville Regional. So the first matchup was a bit of an upset here. The host, East Carolina, lost to Evansville 4-1 earlier today. So that's a bit of an upset there. And then the other one there is, let's see, where's the Wake Forest game? Has that already gone final? Oh, VCU beat Wake Forest. Wow. So right now, the 1-0 game in that regional is VCU and Evansville. Because I was assuming Wake Forest and East Carolina would be the two favorites in that region, especially Wake Forest, because remember, Chase Burns, one of our best pitchers the past few years, especially our best relief pitcher last year, transferred to be the starting ace for Wake Forest because he didn't want to be a relief pitcher. He wanted to be a starter. So he went to Wake Forest. But Wake Forest and East Carolina are now in a do or die tomorrow in Gainesville. That is shocking to me, Gus. I did not see that. And now we are potentially 2 wins away from potentially hosting VCU or Evansville in a super regional next week.
Yeah, I mean, quite a shocker. Number 1 and number 2 go down, and now they're gonna have to play a elimination game that nobody, you know, thought about it. And and I don't know if it's good or bad for Tennessee, because you know in Tennessee athletics, sometimes when Tennessee is the favorite, Tennessee kind of stumbles.
Right, right, and college baseball is a weird sport, man. Like you can't guarantee anything in this sport. So, you know, it's not like basketball. You gotta show up every single night. And this game's not over against Northern Kentucky, so I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here. But still, I mean, VCU winning that game, very surprising to me. So we got VCU in Evansville in the Greenville Regional, partnered with Knoxville. Now, I think some of the most interesting scores of the day. This Vanderbilt losing by 10 to Coastal Carolina, 13-3. We got to start asking some questions here. Is Vanderbilt's baseball dynasty over? Because I've seen some people talk about this, how, because of NIL, how the baseball landscape has changed. And now especially that Tennessee is invested in college baseball. Remember, for years and years, Tennessee didn't care about college baseball. But now we are. Is Vanderbilt no longer in the advantageous position they used to be?
I mean, you can say that, but sometimes, you know, programs go to a down year. Even Alabama, that is a powerhouse in football, had some down years. But there.
I
But
remember last year they were eliminated by Xavier.
and let's not forget, Coastal Carolina won a national championship in college baseball. I believe it was 2016.
I mean,
So
they did.
they have some tradition in college baseball. They won what Tennessee still couldn't won.
True. But then again, it's 2016. How different is college baseball now versus then? I do feel like college baseball now is a little bit more competitive. Granted, I didn't really pay attention to college baseball before 2021.
I remember, I don't know why, but I remember vividly when they won because everybody was shocked. I remember I was driving down to Myrtle Beach and, I even kind of stumbled about the parade. For a small school like Coastal Carolina, that was their, historical moment. But yeah, I mean, of course, things change in 8 years. Probably, Coastal Carolina college baseball program looked way different than back then. But definitely, Commodore fans, they used to be proud of their baseball program. Not anymore.
Right, and they'll play the loser of High Point and Clemson, which that's a close game in itself right now, 3-3. So can High Point pull off that upset to advance? I mean, there's a lot of interesting scores right now. I don't know if I would call this an upset here, but it's just an interesting matchup. UCF versus Alabama. I mean, I wish this was a football game and not a baseball game. Settle the 2017 national championship.
Yeah, Florida State took care of business, winning against Stanson.
And they'll play the winner of UCF and Alabama.
Yeah.
We got LIU at Long Island. Wow! Oh my gosh! What? Long Island is leading North Carolina 8-5, and North Carolina is down to their last 3 outs. Wow!
I mean, you see a lot of host regionals losing. East Carolina. You see, North Carolina. So I guess you can see Tennessee. Then it's a good thing they're winning, even though they're a little bit of trouble in the 7th inning. Cause he's out. Good.
Well, I think he got a triple.
Oh, he got a triple. He was safe.
He was safe. Yeah. At least I think he was safe. Right.
I mean,
well, just gotta get. They'll probably need to bring another pitcher. I mean, this pitcher's at like 100 pitches. Tony V probably needs to bring in a new guy at this point. I mean, it's not just gone this long. He's safe. But definitely that's a very surprising score because the winner of that game will play LSU, who defeated Wofford earlier. So now LSU is in the driver's seat, and we were talking about this last week how LSU really struggled at the beginning of this year, but now they're kind of getting hot, and now LSU might be in the driver's seat to win that region, which is very dangerous.
Yeah, that's true. And you know, and his opponent, the Tennessee, defeated in the SEC championship, but you don't want to play them again.
Right. Well, Northern Kentucky did score, so it's 6-3 now. So game's not quite over yet. Would like to get at least a run or two here in the 7th to kind of finish them off. But I mean, credit to the Norse, they're fighting. I mean, that's all. And when you're a team like Northern Kentucky, that's all you can do. Continue fighting, and obviously they know this is their chance. This is what they call their Super Bowl, right? So like they're gonna fight hard. So got to finish them off here if you're the Volunteers. Looking at some other scores here, Texas is winning 12-5. That would set up Texas versus Texas A&M and the College Station Regional, which will be a very spicy matchup. Which we also saw in softball, by the way, too. Texas A&M, and that's super regional. So we're kind of getting a lot of taste of what's about to come this Thanksgiving when Texas and Texas A&M meet again on the football field. And we get out of the 7th. So now we're heading to the bottom of the 7th. It's time for the 7th inning stretch. I wish I had an organ so I could play Take Me Out to the Ball Game, but we don't. Looking at the rest here, Oklahoma leads Oral Roberts 8-0 in the Norman Regional. So Oklahoma will play UConn tomorrow. We have North Carolina State beating Bryant 7-2. They will likely play South Carolina, who just barely edged out James Madison 8-7 earlier in a pretty good game. Oklahoma State's leading in their regional. They're up 13-6 on Niagara. I believe they will be playing Florida. And this was a weird pick to me. Florida is 28-27 this year, but they still got one of the last at-large spots, and granted, they had like the number 1 strength of schedule, number 30 RPI, but I still feel like you shouldn't reward a team that's one game over 500 because at some point you got to win games.
Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, but sometimes you try to understand the metrics that NCAA uses for teams to go to the regionals.
Right, but they did win. They did beat Nebraska. So Florida, Oklahoma State, that'll be an interesting matchup, I would think. Right now we have UNC Wilmington beating Georgia Tech, and that would set up UNC Wilmington versus Georgia in Athens. So we may not get the Georgia Tech-Georgia game there in Athens after all, which is interesting. We have Charlottesville in Virginia. So we're going to extras, actually, between St. John's and Miss State. Miss State, they were talking about them potentially being a host site, and now they're going to extras with St. John's, of all teams. And they should be playing, I'm assuming Virginia won. They won 4-2 over Pennsylvania. We have 3-1 Illinois over Indiana State. They will be playing Kentucky, who, side note, did have to really squeak out a win. They won 10-8 over Western Michigan earlier today in Lexington. So Kentucky looking kind of shaky here heading into the postseason. We'll see if the Wildcats can kind of keep it together before. Oh, and I think that one's gone, baby. Let's go. Home run for the Volunteers. Who is that? That is Hunter Inslee with his 9th of the year, 7-3, Big Orange.
I guess one more run will take care of business.
Oh, yeah, I would say so. But Kentucky had to struggle to win that one, but they did win 10-8. We have, let's see, how many more are still even going on? We have Grand Canyon leads Arizona 1-0 so far in Tucson. I believe West Virginia defeated Dallas Baptist 4-1 in the other game there. So the winner of that would take on West Virginia. Santa Barbara leads 1-0 over Fresno State. The winner of that gets Oregon. The loser has to play San Diego. And Corvallis, Tulane, and Oregon State are tied 0-0. And I believe that's That's UC Irvine defeated Nickel 13-12. That sounded like that was a crazy game. The last game going on right now is Kansas State, Louisiana Tech, K-State leading 2-0 over Louisiana Tech. And to just shout out Arkansas here, I mean, they did score 17, but they let up 9 runs to Southeast Missouri State. And heading into this tournament, they are the number 1 pitching team. So that would concern me because we all know, because one of the ongoing storylines is Dave Van Horn in Arkansas have not won anything in the postseason. They have not won a College World Series. And for Arkansas, they've been taking baseball a lot more seriously for a longer time than Tennessee has. A lot of pressure on Arkansas.
Yeah, because their fans are loud, but their team can't win.
Absolutely. So there you go. So just overall, kind of what is the result that stands out to you the most so far, looking at all this?
Oh, of course, Evansville beating East Carolina, because Evansville looked like the weakest of like the teams that made it to the regionals, and so far their win was the most shocking one, and you know, and in Lindsey Nelson Stadium today was a new attendance record, 6,396 fans. Wow.
Right. And look at the fans with the big hats. And of course, that'll get topped next year when we get 8K seats into LNS. And I wonder too because I went by the new Smoky Stadium last week, and it's getting close to being done. I wonder if they would ever consider moving a tournament game into there.
I wouldn't, because Lindsey Nelson Stadium creates such a hostile environment, because it's right in the heart of UT campus. It's kind of like the shape even of the stadium makes the fans feel closer to the action. I wouldn't. I mean,
Right.
you would have you could made like what I think Tennessee joined couple of times. I remember there was like the tournaments, even at Smoky City and Kodak, they could play there like with ETSU, Vandy, or other teams that you create those small tournaments within the season. But when it comes to postseason, Lindsey Nelson Stadium is the perfect venue.
Yeah, I think that's a fair enough argument. And plus, I saw on Family Radio there, and I had Tucker Harlan, a guy that worked at RSS after we did. He works for Fox Sports Knoxville now, and I saw some of the crowd pictures from the current Smoky Stadium, and there was no one there, no one in Kodak, which just goes to show why building a minor league stadium 20 miles east of a city is a terrible idea.
I mean, I'm biased because how much I enjoy it, and have some great memories with Smoky Stadium, and I always thought they were and I saw them uh, sellout crowds, but it was always because of like you know team nights, like Star Wars night, or other like themes, but never because of the baseball team.
Right. Well, at the very least, I'm glad Knoxville's at least seeing the progress of their baseball stadium, because Chattanooga's not at all. I mean, I had another baseball stadium story earlier this week yesterday, actually. It's been a long 36 hours in the deuce business, folks. But before we were so rudely interrupted yesterday afternoon, I was working on a story on the stadium here, the new stadium, and they still haven't given final approval for it, and they're still trying to finalize financial documents. They're still trying to negotiate the community benefits agreement. I mean, they said they were going to be done with this a month ago, and we're still sitting here trying to figure out and hammer out details after the project went up by $40 million. And I'm starting to wonder, are we ever actually going to see this thing? Because, we've seen just very minor utility work, and, that's it. We were supposed to be playing ball in this park in 6 months. That's not going to happen. We might even get start construction within 6 months.
Yeah, that's true. It's uh, it looks like, but it's funny that um, I think recently there was a sellout crowd at AT&T Park, so the fans are showing up. The fans are embracing the team, but you know definitely it would be better in a new stadium. I mean, you
Right,
can.
and the thing about it is, as much as some people don't want to say it, the lookouts will leave if we don't build this new stadium. The like literally, it was said during the meeting yesterday that MLB has to approve the stadium. Like, because the stadium still has not been approved by MLB because the MLB has to approve every major and minor league new stadium. And yeah, there's a chance that MLB says, "Yep, it's not good enough for us. Lookouts, you got to leave," which is wild to me.
Because I guess AT&T Park, it feels a little bit outdated by the standards that the even minor league ballparks are.
Yeah, I mean, it was outdated the day it was built, and plus, it was built into the sun. Like, well, come on, who designs a baseball park that's supposed to go out into the sun? Because they were trying to get it to where you could see like the river and the mountains and all that, but like you have to prioritize the viewing experience, and that stadium just doesn't do it.
Yeah, yeah, and it feels like it feels cramped because it's by the interstate, but it's hard to access. I don't know.
And
I
parking
never
it can
been.
be hard because of the aquarium and the IMAX that's right there. And of course, you've got several restaurants that are right there. Got the Creative Discovery Museum that's right there. It's just in a very touristy part of town. And the lookouts are not going to attract tourists. Minor league teams don't attract tourists. And this was the thing with the Smoky Stadium. Minor league teams are for their local communities. Because like if I go to a different city, I'm not going to go watch their minor league baseball team. That's just not. Now, if I might go see an opposing major league team, but I'm not going to go to another minor league team.
Yeah, I found uh so the in May 2022 was the biggest attendance Tuesday attendance since 2014. Wow. I mean, see,
Right.
like fans are showing up.
Yeah, I mean, they totally are. I mean, there is an appetite here. And, some people have derided saying, no, no one goes to these games. And people do go to these games. Now, granted, I don't go to a ton of them, but I do go every now and then. I usually try to go when the Braves are in town. The Mississippi Braves are in town, for example, to see some of the young Braves prospects. Um, but,
I used to go to a lot of Smokies games because I had my press credential and there was free food. Not gonna lie, but and the press box was nice, but definitely. And I saw even some Brazilian players there. Reginato was with the lookouts. Uh, Bo Takahashi, I think, was with the um, Jackson. That was, I think, the minor leagues by of these Reds. So even so, minor league can be even interesting to see international players.
oh, absolutely. And, hey, you never know when you're going to see the next superstar. But we have just ended the seventh there. We're going to the top of the eighth between Tennessee and Northern Kentucky. All right, to shift over to softball, I just hate to say it any other way, but it was a choke job. So unfortunately for the Lady Vols, we're home against Alabama. They won game one and had a 14 inning epic on Saturday where they came up just short. And then they walk out on Sunday and get blasted with a grand slam, get hit by tornadic supercells out of nowhere, and they end up losing. Just an unfortunate end for the season for a season that was hype, right? Because softball entered the season ranked preseason number 2, go into the tournament number 3. They were cruising all year, and it all came apart against the Alabama Crimson Tide. I'm sorry, another failure for the weeklies here, unfortunately, because they still have not won it all in softball.
Yeah, and was sad to see them eliminated because they would have been in bracket 2, and they would have probably an epic match against Oklahoma, and and it's and of all programs, losing to Alabama which I know the rivalry is bigger in football, but you don't want to lose your arch rival in any sport.
especially at
Uh,
home. I mean, imagine
yeah,
Alabama coming. I mean, and this could be a scenario now in football. Alabama eliminating Tennessee in Neyland. I mean, this is what just happened in softball. I mean, that would be very, very hard to stomach. And it sucks to see in softball because like they have to play the Alabama fight song, and they did that on Rocky Top. It just feels dirty and disgusting, but that's what happened here, unfortunately. And I hate to see it. And softball is going to get hard next year, right? With Oklahoma and Texas coming, those are literally the top 2 seeds this year. So I wouldn't pick us to win the SEC title next year, to say the least.
yeah, and the brackets are interesting. Texas and Florida, won their games against Oklahoma State and Stanford. Um, Duke is already eliminated, and probably Alabama is going to face the loser of Oklahoma UCLA. So the interesting
I mean,
brackets.
probably Oklahoma will win that. I mean, I still think Oklahoma wins it all. I mean, probably going to get an Oklahoma Texas rematch, I would think.
Yeah,
So,
it looks like it's going to be that.
yeah, which will be an epic series. So I'll be curious to see who wins that. I'll still take OU, but maybe Texas can find a way to take them out. All right.
One
And
one
that's
story, one story I pull up there. It made me think because two SEC schools, Auburn and Texas A&M, won national titles this week. Auburn won in men's golf, and Texas A&M won in you know women's tennis. So, I want to bring to a larger question: how dominant is the SEC within college athletics? Because it feels like you saw, for example, the regionals in baseball, SEC schools all over brackets. Softball, less, but still you have Florida and Alabama, and two schools that are gonna be SEC, Texas and Oklahoma, and you know, so how dominant the Southeastern Conference are not only in football but in other sports.
I mean, just think about how shocking it was that the national title didn't have an SEC team. How shocked we were when it was Michigan and Washington. It's because the SEC has created the standard of being literally everywhere. And maybe outside of men's basketball is the one sport where we really haven't been dominant. But I mean, Alabama was there in the Final Four. Tennessee was almost there in the Elite Eight. And basically everywhere else, yeah, SEC were dominant. South Carolina with the women's basketball and um, you know, obviously LSU at gymnastics are national champions, and just basically they're champions everywhere, right? And it's just because the
Yeah,
SEC schools are the most passionate, they invest the most money, and they are the most desirable schools for athletes. And increasingly, they're becoming the most desirable schools for academics as well. So, I mean, SEC schools are where it's at. That's why reason why I went to one, and uh, because I feel like you get some of the best bang for your buck in an SEC school from an academic and athletic perspective. And it doesn't surprise me when the SEC schools dominate. We run things, and now with Texas and Oklahoma coming, the SEC is about to be even more dominant. And I'm looking forward to all these people who are just going to hate the SEC for no reason.
or it says there's a conspiracy always to benefit the Southeastern Conference. But
Pretty
I,
much.
yeah, it was just fun. But I just, that stand out to me because I know we don't pay attention to other sports like that. But for me, it's shocking because probably like 10 years ago, you just didn't see, SEC schools winning other sports. I mean, but in 10 years, they grow so much. And, and I probably the Big Ten, I think, is going to compete better with UCLA, USC, probably get like a stronger conference. But so far, I think the Southeastern Conference, because what you point out, because you have more passionate fans that, translate into more money and more investment and a better programs.
Right, and how many championships are going to see won by teams not in the SEC or Big Ten moving forward in any sport? Like, how many championships are we going to see outside of these two conferences? I think you're going to see very few to none.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's a they're gonna become the super conferences not only in football but in other sports.
Oh, for sure. Of course, Big Ten hasn't been historically great in college baseball, although we're very close to having an SEC Big Ten match tomorrow in uh, in Knoxville, Indiana. So we'll see what happens there. One last college I want to bring up: NCAA 25 has had a gameplay reveal trailer. Now there's our first video of the actual gameplay, and I'll say I was impressed. I'm excited for the various modes that are in this game, the various features. Like they actually have like stamina. So basically, if a player gets hit, like they'll lose attributes. And it was interesting to see some of the different rankings. So the Vols are ranked 15th in this game preseason, which is interesting. Georgia's like number one. I believe I saw Texas was 3. I'm assuming Ohio State's 2. Um, and got to see a little bit of Nico in the game, among other players. I'm getting more and more convinced that I'm gonna have to purchase a PS5. And I know it's probably not the wisest financial decision, but man, I want to play this game.
Oh yeah, I mean even Dylan Becker, which shout out to him, he's his birthday today, said he wants to join him to talk about the new EA college football video game. I
Oh,
think
bring him on. Bring him on.
yeah, yeah. Because, but I wonder if I will be able to buy in Brazil or be available internationally. I know there's not much demand because college football is a very very American product. Like unlike the NFL, uh, but I'm just curious to see if they'll be available for other countries.
Yeah, were you able to buy previous versions of NCAA in Brazil?
I don't remember. I mean, it has 10 years ago, I didn't even knew college football existed, so I didn't you know look at the game because I only started caring or even acknowledging college football when I moved to US back in 2015.
Right, and obviously, I'm assuming there's not much of a market outside of the U.S. for this game, but I'm assuming with online marketplaces, you should be able to buy it. I would think. I'm sure. You could probably even jailbreak it to buy it. Um, but in any
or,
case,
or even VPN probably will help.
oh, for sure. Like there's, you should be able to find a way to play the game. Um, I think it'll be a very interesting game, and it looks like it actually might be a really quality product, which is always something you have to be aware with when it comes to EA Sports. But I am very interested to play this game when it comes out, and I'm just going to have to drop $500 on the PS5 to do it first, um, which will be expensive, but hey, the price you pay. I bet it's funny. This is the longest I've gone without buying a new video game system like ever. It seems like it's well weird when you become an adult how things and priorities changes. Um, but anyway, is Dylan coming on or no?
Not today. He said he wants to join in the future when the game is released.
Oh yeah, I have suggested in the past. I think when it comes out, and if I do get it, we need to do an episode where I'm like live streaming it while I for
Oh
myself
yeah.
playing, and like I do the
Oh
podcast
yeah.
while I'm playing. Like I think that would
Please,
be cool.
please, please do so we can explore the game live to our audience.
Yeah, that might be the first episode after it comes out and I get the game. That's what we'll do. And I think we got him out. Northern Kentucky was trying to steal, and Kirby Connell said no. And how Kirby Connell has been here forever. It feels like. At number 35 for Tennessee, with the epic mustache for the Vols. He has been on our roster literally forever. So He is a Tennessee player, a BFL. He reminds me. He's almost like baseball Fulky at this point. Remember how Fulky was on the basketball team forever? It seemed like.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's a good comparison.
Right. So I'm definitely happy that he still is rolling. All right, let's transition over into basketball, and I do need to lead this off with some sad news first. Bill Walton, legendary basketball player, legendary commentator, passed away earlier this week from, I believe it was complications of cancer. He was only 71. Just a legend. Obviously, was one of the funniest uh, commentators on the planet, and obviously was a great ball player in his day. And it just sucks that he'll no longer get to call like Maui or Pac. Well, and it's crazy because he was almost known as the voice of the Pac-12, and of course the Pac-12 dies, and well, there's no more Pac-12 games for him to call, and now he's not going to call any more games.
What was funny about him was his beef with Shaq. Like there was literally, uh, a video about on Secret Base, a very good YouTube channel, talking about how they didn't like each other. So I guess he was not beloved by everyone in the basketball world, but definitely it's a sad news. He was a very important, icon in NBA on and off the court. Definitely, my thoughts and prayers to the family, and definitely he'll be missed. Not by Shaq, but to basketball fans.
Absolutely, and hopefully in heaven the Pac-12 will exist forever for Bill.
Speaking of which, did you saw how sad it was the last broadcast of the Pac-12 network?
I didn't see the Pac-12, and I know it was the day before Walton passed, which is insane.
Yeah,
It's so creepy because I mean, Bill Walton is so associated with that conference, and now we don't have either the Pac-12 or Bill Walton anymore, and um, there's just something so wrong about that.
yep, but definitely they will be missed.
Absolutely, rest in peace. But Bill Walton, as fun-loving, as free-spirited he was, he'd want us to talk about some basketball. And we've got some basketball definitely to talk about here. Dallas and Boston have won their conference finals. Boston did it in a sweep. Dallas did it in 5. And Kyrie will face his former team in the Celtics. Just first and foremost, just kind of what is your initial reaction to this matchup here between the Mavs and the Celtics?
I think it was the expected matchup for the NBA Finals after the Eastern and Western Conference Finals were set. Both Indiana and Minnesota um, didn't feel they were ready to advance. Indiana, have weak defense, and Minnesota have a weak offense. So both, I think, are going to be back in the playoffs, probably be a contenders, but they're not quite ready yet. And Dallas and Boston, they are ready. They are, definitely the teams that deserve the most to be in this final. And logically, you say Boston is the most deserving team and the favorite to win, but are they gonna get it done? It always feels they are ready to win and they lose.
Right. Well, before I even get to that, I want to get to the Pacers and the Timberwolves first, because obviously you have to commend both teams. Both teams, I think, vastly outperformed expectations this year. No one expected either one of them to be in their conference finals, and I think they both had significant achievements. That being said, the Pacers could have won this series. They really could have won this series. They had 3 different chances in the game 1, game 3, and game 4. Siri is being annoying right now. Excuse me for a second. But anyway, they had chances in game 1, game 3, and game 4 of this series. where at different points in those respective fourth quarters, they had a 90+% chance of winning, according to odds, according to historical statistics, and they managed to lose every single game. The game management by Indiana in this series was appalling. The turnovers, the shot selections, like they were rushing shots way too often. They were causing too many turnovers, and they didn't commit enough on defense. As you said, the defense was their weakness, and they just couldn't find a way to get stops down the stretch. Just playing any more slightly better in any of those facets, you're at least 2-2 after 4, and the Pacers, frankly, could have been 3-1 after 4. Now you have to give Boston credit because they found ways to close those series, but if they play the way they did against Indiana, against Dallas, they're not winning the NBA Finals. They were lackluster throughout the series, especially on defense, and they kind of had some questions on offense. I think they weren't as consistent offensively as you would like to see, especially considering who they're about to play against in Dallas. Now, Minnesota, on the other hand, they kind of, as you said, they kind of got exposed defensively here just because Kyrie and Luka are one of the best offensive duos the game has perhaps ever seen. And ultimately, at the end of the day, there just wasn't enough help for Anthony Edwards out there. Karl Anthony Towns was here and there. I mean, he had a great game, in Game 5, but it wasn't enough, especially when Rudy Gobert didn't provide you anything with 9 points. There just wasn't enough help to overcome what Luka and Kyrie do, especially when both players have 36 apiece. You're not beating Dallas. It's reminiscent of the 2016 Cavs when you look at Kyrie and Luka together. And Kyrie is clearly the most focused he has been in at least 5 years since the Cavs days. Because, I think, Kyrie, when you look at his journey, he tried to be the number one in Boston. And I think when it didn't work, it messed with his head a bit. And, it messed with his confidence. And then he started going on that whole political thing with the Black Hebrews, and it got into all that off-the-court controversy. But I think he has finally relocked himself in Dallas with Luka, who might be one of the best scorers that the game has ever seen. I threw in this take to my friends last night, and I'm curious what you think about this. I think Luka right now is better than prime Kevin Durant.
That's a hard debate to have. I mean, Luka is more explosive than Kevin Durant, but I think Kevin Durant is more complete than Luka.
Right, but so KD had Kyrie too, right? And KD and Kyrie could make it to the finals. LeBron has taken Kyrie to the finals, and now Luka has taken Kyrie to the finals. KD couldn't. KD had to go run to Curry to be dragged into the finals.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think what makes a difference because probably Kyrie has to play with the alpha player that is not a diva. Both LeBron and Luka, I don't consider divas. Of course they have their personalities, but I don't consider them divas. I consider them alphas. You know, and it only worked with Kevin Durant because Clay Thompson and Steph Curry took not only one but two step backs, and by the end he wore everybody out, especially oh my god,
Draymond.
Draymond Green. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting when you got to remember, too, the Warriors won one more after he left in 2021, which I think just goes to show how non-essential KD was. I mean, yeah, KD was a luxury ad that got you 2 titles, but you didn't need him. They still could have won those 2 titles without him. Meanwhile,
with Kevin Durant legacy, he can say, "Oh, I won 2 NBA titles," and I think he'll get enough votes for the Hall of Fame. I mean, he definitely was a really elite basketball player, won titles, but his legacy will be defined by somebody who had to join, dynasty to win titles, not carrying a team to titles. He couldn't do with OKC. He couldn't do it with Brooklyn, and it looks like he won't be able to do it in Phoenix.
Oh yeah, I mean Phoenix can't even win a playoff game, so um, let alone win a championship. But in any case, I guess when it comes to this Dallas Boston series, I guess you have I feel like it's a Kyrie / Luka versus Boston, and Boston has the better roster top to bottom. But I think the Mavs have the two best players on the court.
Yeah, it all is going to be defined by how much Jason Tatum is going to show up, I think.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. Jason Tatum, if he wants to prove he's a superstar, now's the time.
Yeah.
Now is absolutely the time for him, because you're going to have to be. Because Luka has proven that he is an international superstar, and Jason Tatum, I think a lot of people maybe still have questions about. And I think, as you said, now's the time. Now is 100% the time for Boston. I'm going to say this, though. I still think the Mavs get this done in 7. That is my pick. I think when it comes down to the clutch, I want Luka and Kyrie over the Celtics.
I think the Celtics get it done finally, even though it would be better storyline and be more interesting to see Dallas winning. But I think Boston, I think is their time to finally get a title after so many failures.
Yeah, I think it'll be a fun series. I think this will be the most entertaining finals here in a couple of years, to say the least. I think since probably Bucks Suns. Celtics Warriors was pretty good, I guess, but Bucks Suns was like the last really great NBA finals. The true really like great NBA finals was Cavs Warriors.
Oh, that 2016 series, that was the peak for me.
Yeah, that of course you got Heat Spurs from like 2013 was epic.
Nothing tops Cavs. The best NBA finals of the 21st century is Cavs Warriors 2016. Like you had everything. Like you had the best overall NBA regular season team in history against one of the best basketball players in the world of all time that was struggling throughout the season, change coaches, and then it felt like they were going to get a gentleman sweep and then come back to win it all.
Oh yeah, and then did it for his hometown too.
Yeah,
that he had previously abandoned and then came back to. Is it like as I've said before? I know Jordan was 6-0 in the finals, but that LeBron championship is more impressive than any of Jordan's 6.
Yes, and he won with 3 different franchises. That should be taken into account. And Tennessee for another home run. I guess now we have the 5-run lead. I guess now it's comfortable. Dylan Drayling.
Yeah, Drayling, baby. He's been good, man. That's his 18th home run. It's just so many players on his roster can hit homers, and it's so impressive. But anyway, 9-3, bottom of the 8th. Yeah, just 3 outs away, and the Vols will be able to get ready for the Hoosiers tomorrow evening. Yeah, but outside of that, as I said, Heat Spurs is probably second to me. Celtics Lakers in the late 2000s, late Kobe years were pretty good. But those are some of the
Dallas Miami 2011. I think was true. Definitely, the first finals LeBron with the Heat. He was favorite, and then Dirk Nowitzki probably was one of the best single player performance in NBA finals of all time.
Yeah, and we don't talk enough about Dirk Nowitzki and his impact. Look at how this decade has been dominated by Eastern Europeans, by Giannis, by Jokic. Now we got Luka. And would any of them be possible without Dirk? Really popularizing Europe, or Europeans in basketball, you know?
Do you know what's funny about this new trend of European players uh, dominating the NBA right now? Jerry Krause, the infamous Jerry Krause, the GM of the '90s Bulls, he saw that trend. He wanted to shift that way, but Michael Jordan was not in favor, and it feels like he was ahead of the curve,
Hmm.
ahead of his time at least.
Oh, for sure. There's a lot of interesting stuff there with him, but you know,
But that's true. Like Dirk Nowitzki opened kind of the pathway to Luka, to Giannis, to Jokic, and
oh, for sure.
and to many more. Like Victor Wembanyama, you'll be a new generation. You'll be a new kind of this new generation.
Yeah. Well, maybe some Americans can find their way back up to the top too at some point. You gotta wonder when this is going to catch up to the U.S. national basketball team as well. Will it catch up to us at this Olympics here in a few weeks? That remains to be seen. And we'll definitely be interested. I think that'll be one of the main talking points, I'm sure, when we get to the Olympics here later this summer. Um, but anyway, off to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Right now, we have the Oilers and the Stars in the Western Conference Finals, and the Edmonton Oilers right now midway are towards the back half of the second half, up 3-0 on the road against Dallas. So Edmonton looking to get one game within uh, the finals, which is crazy because remember they're trying to become the first Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup in over 30 years. And they have the best player right now in the NHL in Connor McDavid. I mean, I just think this is huge. And I think it's kind of cool that Wayne Gretzky is getting to watch all this from the studio box. Yeah, obviously the legendary Edmonton Oiler.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely they carry a lot of load. I feel like Edmonton Oilers, with all this drought the Canadian teams have in the NHL, but it'll be so epic if there was Oilers and Rangers.
Well, the Rangers have some work to do. They lost 3-2 last night to Florida and are now down 3-2. So you're going to have to find a way to win in Miami and then come back to MSG for Game 7. But I hope they win in Game 6 because Game 7 at Madison Square Garden against Florida would be an unreal atmosphere.
But it will be another Game 7 for Madison Square Garden. The last time a New York sports team had a Game 7 there, it did not end well.
It did not end well. A lot of things have not been ending well in New York recently. On the sports court, or the legal or the courtroom. But in any case, it definitely didn't end well last night for the New York Rangers. And can you imagine, Florida can finally win one more game? That'd be back-to-back Stanley Cup Finals for Florida, which is crazy. I mean, they're really honestly, trying to replicate what Tampa Bay did.
I was gonna compare them to the Tampa Bay Rays because it felt surreal, a franchise that is not in a because they're not even in Miami per se. They are outside of Miami. They're kind of like I think even 20 to 25 miles away, and they're one of the kind of the not big brand in hockey, but they are dominating recently. That's why I kind of compare to the Rays because the Rays also it feels like they are not as a big brand in baseball as like the Yankees and the Dodgers, but in the recent years they made it to the World Series a couple of times.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And I'll be curious to see if they have a shot. But I really still think the Rangers will find a way to get this back. I still think Rangers Oilers is untapped. But hey, we could see Panthers Oilers too. So I mean, anything could happen. It's Stanley Cup, and I think also another discussion to be had: is it bad for the NBA that their conference finals ended so soon? Because now we have over a week between the last conference final game and the NBA finals. And is it an indictment on the product of the NBA that we couldn't have competitive conference finals?
It happens to time. I think the NBA have to be more flexible in terms of their final date because they set up a date expecting the series to go at least six, and now, but think about the teams are going to have a week to rest, so the games are going to be better, or at
I mean,
least
true.
close.
But we were talking about this earlier in the newsroom. Like we were talking about like the LeBron and Miami Heat, and I'm like, they would kill both of these teams, Dallas and Boston. Like the NBA teams have kind of. I feel like they're not as good as they were like 10 years ago. At least the top echelon. I mean, there's more parity, but you don't have true like elite teams like you did maybe just a decade ago.
Yeah, I feel. I mean, it's going to be the sixth different NBA champion. The last back to back was Golden State 2017, 2018. Since then, nobody could do a two-peat.
Right. And that's not terrible, but at the same time, dynasties make the NBA, right? Like we talk about Jordan, we talk about the Celtics, we talk about the Warriors and the Heat. We're in a weird spot where there is no dynasty. And the NBA has never really had this. Like even in the NFL, we have the Chiefs. And right now it feels like the whole thing is about trying to stop the Chiefs. In the NFL and the NBA, it feels like there's not one team we're trying to stop. Or just a whole bunch of good teams, no great teams. So, anyway, that's interesting. I think that's just a discussion that I've been hearing out, just talking to people.
So some NFL news more focusing to the Brazilian fans because finally the NFL released the date that the Philadelphia Eagles versus Green Bay Packers Brazil game in Corinthians Arena on September 6th are going to be, the tickets are going to be sold. So they're going to be a pre-sale for clients of an investment firm that has a specific credit card from 10 to 12 of June. But then on June 13th, there are going to be tickets being sold for the general public. So a lot of NFL Brazilian fans are looking forward to June 13th to get that ticket to this historical game in Corinthians Arena on September 6th. A lot of people are trying to speculate how much it will cost. It's going to be 500 reais, 700, 1,000, 1,500. Who knows? I mean,
It'll probably be pretty expensive.
Yeah, it's going to be expensive, no doubt about it. But I wonder how much it's going to be expensive. But yeah, so that's one interesting news, especially here out of the Brazil NFL game. And other interesting news: VFL Juwan Jennings signing a 2-year deal worth $15.4 million with 10 million guarantee. I think he deserved after that great Super Bowl performance.
Oh, for sure. And he's been in the league now for 4 or 5 years at this point, and he has been a very solid contributor to the 49ers. And I found an interesting quote where he says now that he got a new contract, he's going to finally buy a new car. He's still driving the same car from college, believe it or not. So go get yourself that new car, Jawan. You deserve it, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, I guess that car has a lot of Knoxville stories.
Oh, yeah. I think I've seen that Knoxville car, too, because he drove by the protest in 2017 where we were chanting Free Jawan at him. So I'm glad to be a very small part of the Jawan story as the Volunteers have officially defeated the North Kentucky Norse 9-3 on the opening night of the NCAA baseball tournament. They will take on Indiana tomorrow.
Another NFL note, I don't know if we talked about it or not. The NFL draft is going to be in Pittsburgh in 2026. I guess now the NFL is really rotating their draft.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. It's a good idea to see different cities. When you go to like watch these different games, you don't really see the cities, but like the draft, you do. Like the draft for Detroit, I think was phenomenal. Like it makes me much more interested to go see Detroit. Like I'm sure this will make me much more interested to see Pittsburgh. I think like last year they did KC. I think it's great. It's just great to really showcase these different areas.
But nothing would top 2019 Nashville. That was
Oh, I would
historic.
agree. Would
Nothing
totally
would
agree with
top
that.
that. That
Nashville is the
was,
ultimate party host city.
oh yeah, yeah, definitely. And another interesting note: Chicago Bears training camp will be featured on Hard Knocks. I guess it's interesting because we'll follow the this new NFL quarterback star and a lot of drama.
And I heard that Caleb Williams, 7-7s, was 13-15, including a touchdown pass to DJ Moore. So, going to be a lot of hype for Caleb Williams and the number one overall pick for sure. And I honestly, in my initial picks on the NFL schedule release website, I had them in the wild card. So, I think they're going to be pretty good. Speaking of another number one pick, real quick, just on the WNBA side of things, Caitlin Clark Indiana Fever finally did win a game. They won last Friday night. So actually, we were watching a bit. I was watching a bit of the game during our last podcast. They ended up winning against the Los Angeles Sparks, 78-73. They haven't won another game since. They are 1-8 right now, so they're definitely struggling. But hey, tomorrow they play the Chicago Sky, who has none other than Angel Reese on the team. So it'll be Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark for the first time in the WNBA, which will be an interesting matchup.
Oh yeah, I
But
mean, and again, like I pointed out, I think last week, this was expected. That's why Indiana Fever had the number one pick. They're rebuilding. Will take some time for the Fever to be somewhat competitive. And even get somewhat uh, close to winning, a championship, even though they have Caitlin Clark.
right, of course, right now the best team is Connecticut Sun. They're 7-0, undefeated, followed by New York, Minnesota, and Atlanta are the top four right now. Worst team is Washington. I believe they're the Mystics, if I'm correct. The Washington
Yeah,
Mystics. Yep,
Washington Mystics.
yep, they're 0-8 so far, so they are winless. So that's another game I think Indiana can win for sure whenever they play. But obviously, they play some of these tougher teams like Connecticut, New York, and Minnesota, which I would imagine Connecticut or New York will probably win the championship, I would think, later on this summer. All right. I want to finish out with some racing because we had a really weird weekend of racing. Let's just say weather screwed everything up this weekend. We had some just horrific weather across the country, a major tornado outbreak, and unfortunately, it kind of touched our races. So let's start off with the Indianapolis 500. Was supposed to start at noon, didn't start till 4 p.m., but we did get a full Indianapolis 500, thankfully, and it was absolutely epic. An epic Indy 500 that came down to the wire with Joseph Newgarden and Pato O'Ward. So Newgarden led at the start-finish line for the white lap, but Pato O'Ward passes him heading into turn one, but he made his move too soon as Joseph Newgarden passed him back on the outside heading into turn three at Indianapolis, and he got his second straight win at the Indy 500 and ran into the crowd to celebrate with the fans. Just an incredible scene. What a race. And the Indianapolis 500, I mean, look, and I love NASCAR more than I love IndyCar. Like, I will openly admit that. And I think partially I'm just a Southerner at heart. But, I mean, the Indianapolis 500 is just amazing. Like, it has it's one of those sports events that just has that aura. And I think it was cool seeing it in the evening, like IMS and Sunset. It just had a different feeling to it than other Indy 500s. So it was cool to watch, and it had a great atmosphere.
Oh yeah, it's a different atmosphere. It's definitely uh a unique event, and it's is definitely one of the most important racing races in North America.
Right. And, of course, the same day of the Indy 500 is the Coca-Cola 600 in Charlotte. Now, this is where things get even messier. So the Coke 600, which is the longest race on the NASCAR schedule, started on time. Got about 250 of the 400 laps in, and rain hit Charlotte. Storms in the same system hit Charlotte, and Christopher Bell won. They couldn't restart the race. There was some controversy about that, but it was late. I don't blame NASCAR for not restarting that race because they wouldn't have restarted until like 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning. Now, it was a good race overall. Just unfortunately, we couldn't see the full race. But what really made this sting, and I haven't mentioned him yet because this is the really big debate right now in racing circles. Kyle Larson, the biggest star in American racing, he was trying to race both races in the same day. He was going to do the 500 miles in Indianapolis, then fly to Charlotte to do 600 miles, start at 5th in Charlotte, or 5th in Indianapolis, and then run to Charlotte to race that race. Well, when it stormed in Indy at noon, he had to make a decision. He had to decide, okay, do I stay in Indianapolis to race for the Indy 500, or do I go to Charlotte and race in my normal racing series with the 600? He decided to stay in Indianapolis to race the 500. And he had a pretty good race. He was up in the top 5, top 10 most of the day. And I thought he was going to have a shot at it, but at the win, but then he spent on pit road in the last third of the race and screwed up his chances. Didn't finish in the top 15, but he still raced pretty well. And then he tries to get on a plane, and he lands in Charlotte right as it starts raining there. So he never got a chance to race in Charlotte, and has just completely missed a race. And now there's a debate of whether or not, because there's a rule in NASCAR that if you miss a race, you're not eligible for the playoffs at the end of the year. Now, they have this thing that's called a playoff waiver that they normally hand out to drivers that have like injury or something like that. And they have never really denied one. But NASCAR hasn't granted him a waiver. And technically right now, Kyle Larson, because he chose to race in Indianapolis over Charlotte, is technically ineligible for the playoffs. Now, I think he will be made eligible once again by NASCAR because NASCAR had a big hand in promoting this double. But there are some drivers, including like Joey Logano, some people in the industry, who said that NASCAR should be offended that he chose to race in Indianapolis in IndyCar's main event over NASCAR's arguably second biggest racing event of the year in the Coke 600. Because, I mean, obviously our main event is a Daytona 500. But after that, the 600-mile race in Charlotte, because you got to remember, most race teams are based in Charlotte, North Carolina, where this race was. What do you think? Do you think NASCAR should allow Kyle Larson back into the playoffs after choosing the Indy 500 over the 600-mile race in Charlotte when he was forced to by weather?
It's a tricky situation. Definitely, it has to really be. I think this rule. I think it should be deducting points probably if you miss a race, not eliminated by the playoffs. I think the rules should be changed.
Yeah, I think that it's way too broad brush. And plus, we've had situations where Kyle Busch, for example, in 2015, got hurt at the beginning of the year, missed 11 races. They still let him be in the playoffs, and he won the entire championship. He only raced 24 races that year out of 36. He missed a third of the season and won the title. That's ridiculous. But one race, no. I think Kyle should be allowed back in. And NASCAR, for some idiotic reason, doesn't let him be in the playoffs. No driver will ever try the double again. That's just the bottom. That's just the plain simple of it. And the double is good for both NASCAR and IndyCar. The ratings for both races were up because people wanted to see Kyle Larson do this because Kyle Larson is the best driver in American motorsports right now. And it would be a shame if NASCAR did something like that. I don't think they're going to. It would be the dumbest decision, frankly, they would have ever made. And NASCAR's made some dumb decisions over the years. This would be the dumbest decision they've ever made. And if they do that, I will come and rain fire and brimstone on this podcast if they do it, because that would be ridiculous. And you've just made, and that you would render your championship completely illegitimate. Because I mean, I don't take your playoffs seriously anyway, because I think it should be a full 36 season or 36 race season. Like this, we've talked about this before. Playoffs in racing are stupid. It's not a ball. It's not baseball. It's not basketball. It's not football. It's not just two teams. You're always racing 40 other drivers. You can't do playoffs in NASCAR.
Yeah, because it feels weird when you are in the playoff racing, you know, other driver, but the other eliminated drivers are still in. It's like if you have to, if you're the Kansas City Chiefs and you made it to the Super Bowl, but somehow you have to play the Chicago Bears.
Right. Like, it makes no sense. So, anyway, if NASCAR's smart, they'll give them a waiver and then back into the playoffs. I think they will. And they'll be going to Gateway this week in St. Louis. But another piece of news in NASCAR this week, which is kind of sad, Stewart-Haas Racing is officially shutting down operations. They've been one of the best teams in NASCAR for well over a decade now. This has been owned by Tony Stewart and Gene Haas, because Gene Haas has an F1 team. Tony Stewart is a three-time NASCAR champion. And they just have decided they're going to close shop. And to me, it's the fault of Tony Stewart and John Haas. I think Gene Haas is much more enamored with F1 at this point than NASCAR. He's not interested in NASCAR. And Tony Stewart, I think, has had several incidents with NASCAR. I think we talked about this last episode about him being mad they chose Dirt Bristol over Eldora. That they then let him sign Kyle Larson after the racial slur incident back in 2020. And I think he just gave up on the sport. And plus, he met his now wife drag racing. So now he does that more often. And, I don't blame someone for doing what they love. And clearly Tony Stewart loves to drag race now. But I just hate it that all these people now are losing their jobs because they decided to pursue their other passions. And, it just sucks that this team is going away, because they have been a mainstay in NASCAR for a while now. And Tony Stewart literally won a title with them as a driver owner. Kevin Harvick won a title with them. And it feels like with Kevin Harvick retiring at the end of last year, they went away. So rest in peace to Stewart-Haas. I'll be curious to see where all their drivers go and how it affects Ford moving forward, because Ford now has basically no teams in Xfinity. They've lost a big team in Cup. I think they're going to be at a serious disadvantage compared to Chevrolet and Toyota in the racing speeder. And I can't recall the last time truly we've seen a team fall apart like this. Probably like a Furniture Row, Chip Ganassi leaving NASCAR, something like that. But they are going to Gateway this week in St. Louis. It's a flat track, not my favorite track, but it's been an okay race the past couple of years. My pick is Joey Logano. Joey Logano has been dominant at this track. I think this is also a huge race for Kyle Busch, who struggled this year, but has been great at Gateway as well. But that's all I have for American sports. And Gus, has the Brazilian Championship come back after all those devastating floods?
Yep. Yes, Brazilian Championship is back. Week 7, happens this weekend. It was 2 week, more than that, I say. Was almost like let me count, but it was like 1, 2, 3 weeks, a 3 weeks hiatus, but finally resuming the Brazilian national championship with the teams from Rio Grande do Sul. Granted, they're gonna have to play in other states because their stadiums are rebuilding. They're recuperating after the devastating floods. So, for example, Grêmio is going to play in Curitiba, Porto Alegre tomorrow against Bragantino. Juventude, I believe, plays on the road like Internacional. But, finally resuming the Brazilian National Championship. Atlético Paranaense sits in first place, Bahia second, Flamengo third, Botafogo fourth. But, there's definitely going to be some changes in this table. But yeah, a big game, Vasco against Flamengo, a derby. Vasco has a new coach. Flamengo is in a good moment after having some turmoil. So finally the Brazilian championship is back. But this midweek was for
Wasn't
Libertad.
and
What?
wasn't Baja like Bahia? Weren't they like almost relegated last year?
Oh, they were almost relegated last year. They survived in the last week, and they're owned by the Manchester City, the City Group. So they spend a
Hmm.
lot of money. They are probably one of the top five in spending this Brazilian season. So they are expected
Interesting.
to be good, but so far they didn't won their state championship. They didn't won the Nordeste Cup, which is a competition within the states in the Northeast. So, and Rogério Ceni is under a lot of pressure because he, he had a lot of success in Fortaleza, but so far in Bahia, we even with all the investment from the City Group, no championships. So definitely, Bahia is one of the teams that expected to be good. And you point out good. Last year they survived, you know, by winning the last game of the season. So
Yeah, pretty good turnaround for sure.
yeah,
I see Palmeiras is there mid-table, but yeah, I just wonder are they going to do that thing where like they struggle at the beginning, but then they finally take this seriously and they're just going to storm back and win it?
yeah. Every season feels like that because right now Palmeiras fans are not happy with Abel Ferreira. It's a tradition. It's like Palmeiras win the state championship, struggle mid-season. Palmeiras fans get angry with Abel Ferreira, but somehow they always win a tournament at the end of the season. Or either Libertadores or the Brazilian Championship. So it's a cycle. But Palmeiras played against San Lorenzo on Thursday. They draw. They already qualified. They are the best overall team in the group stage of Libertadores. But interesting headline is that was the last game of Hendrick as a Palmeiras player. He's leaving in June to Real Madrid. So finally, the wonder kid, the big young star from Brazil, is finally gonna play for Real Madrid. I don't see him
I'm
being.
excited for that for sure.
Me too, but I know he's not going to be a starter. He's probably going to be, maybe playing the preseason, but then he's going to be out on the loan for like Real Madrid second team or other
Yeah.
small Spanish team because he has a lot to develop. And,
Also,
especially,
just bonus. Oh, go ahead. Finish that thought.
no, and I was going to say now with Mbappe going to Real Madrid, there's no space right now for Hendrick.
Right. Now, bonus match. I just brought up Real Madrid. Just real quick. And no technical in America or Brazil. Who happens with Dortmund and Real Madrid tomorrow in Champions League?
Oh, I really wish Borussia Dortmund wins because they are so deserving. They nobody expect them to win the Champions League, especially after losing the Bundesliga in the most traumatic possible way. So they went back. They kind of like that would be the best way possible to get back on their feet after that traumatic loss. Is winning Europe. But Real Madrid is Real Madrid, and they are used to games like that. They're used to winning Champions League time after time, especially Carlo Ancelotti. But I hope, and I'm cheering, especially my connection with Borussia Dortmund. I visited their stadium. I had a really good time. So go Dortmund.
I mean, as good a story that would be, I would think Madrid is probably the favorite here. That's who I'm gonna ride with.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, logically, Real Madrid has the better roster, more experienced roster, and you know, and looks like they are heading to La Décima Quinta, the 15th European title. But hopefully, but soccer, is soccer, and and logic is soccer sometimes doesn't show up. But it'll be an interesting final down in London at historical Wembley Stadium.
And isn't it crazy that no Premier League teams could make it to the Wembley final either?
Yeah, that's true. The last time I believe was a Champions League final in Wembley, if I'm not mistaken, is 2011, and there was Manchester United. So let me get this straight. If the last Wembley final was in,
Yeah. And while you look that up, Gus, I do just want to make mention that North Carolina did come back on Long Island. So they did win 11-8 despite being down to their last three outs. So they survive a scare and will play LSU tomorrow.
oh no, the last time Wembley hosted a Champions League final, Borussia Dortmund was in it, but they lost to Bayern Munich 2-1. So Dortmund fans, they're hopeful that no, not again. You want to be again traumatic loss at Wembley.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Wembley is a place of traumatic losses.
Yeah, and and uh, and speaking of European soccer, the final for next year's Champions League is going to be in Germany, Allianz Arena, 2024-2025 season, and then the 2025-2026 season will be at Budapest, Hungary. So the next two uh, Champions League finals venues were set, and I don't know if you saw it, but what a party in Greece, because Olympiacos defeated Fiorentina 1-0, and Greece went absolutely berserk. It was party everywhere. So congratulations to
I'm
uh,
familiar with their ultras. I did not see their newest celebrations.
yeah, and it was funny that the final was in Greece, but it was at a rival stadium of Olympiacos. That made it even more interesting as well. And Atalanta beat Bayern Leverkusen, so Leverkusen couldn't finish this overall season undefeated. They lost in the Europa League final 3-0 to Atalanta. And let's finish with internet kind of international South American soccer, because the group stage of Libertadores is almost done. There's only the Grêmio games that were you know uh, couldn't be played because of the flood, but all the other groups are set. So you have so the number one seeds, the first place groups are Fluminense, São Paulo. This right now is the strongest, but if Grêmio wins both of their games, they're going to be first place. So group season, is still to be decided. Uh, Junior Barranquilla, Bolívar, Palmeiras, Atlético Mineiro, and River Plate. And the second places were Nacional, Peñarol, San Lorenzo, Flamengo, Botafogo, Group C still to be decided, Tajeres, and Colo Colo. So you have a scenario, because it's going to be a drawing. They, for example, you could have Fluminense, Flamengo, you could have São Paulo, Flamengo. You could have Fluminense, Botafogo. You could have even Flamengo and Palmeiras. That would be a really crazy matchup in the round of 32. That would have been insane. The
Sounds
round
like a
of
lot of
16.
derbies coming up.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of derbies coming up, because Flamengo um, and Botafogo stay in second place, especially Flamengo. Flamengo is supposed to be first place, no trouble in this group, and they had two consecutive losses, but they were back to get on their feet and won both games at home to be to qualify for the playoffs. But I'm wondering how this drawing for Libertadores is going to go, because, as I point out, there's probably a lot of chance. There's chances of a lot of big games, even in the round of 16. Copa Sul-Americana, Corinthians, no problem, winning at home, advancing to the round of 16, and and some there's going to be the playoffs, which is the kind of the round of 32 Brazilian teams there: Atlético Paranaense, Bragantino, Cuiabá, and there's still to be determined if Grêmio makes it to the next round of Libertadores or goes to the Sul-Americana. But yeah, so uh, uh, the South American competitions are 99% done with their group stages. So now on to the playoffs of our Champions League and Europa League version here in South America. And
And
last but
that's
not
when it
least,
gets fun.
yeah, that's when it gets fun. Our beloved Rio Branco is still preparing for the Paulista Cup. They're gonna have a practice game, like a scrimmage game against Rio Claro in Rio Claro Stadium. I mean, I expect at least to be competitive. Rio Branco is a little further behind in terms of practice and developmental of the roster because they finished the A4 you know A4 finished way later comparing to A2 and A3, and you had some players coming back later that were part of the championship team. So um, tomorrow's scrimmage, I expect at least, somewhat competitive, but I know there's, a lot of flaws there. It definitely is going to be corrected uh, with this next week. There's finally going to have a full week of practice. And I want to finish my Brazilian side acknowledging and definitely honoring Rio Branco equipment manager Aparecido Ferrari, known as Fish Cat. He worked for Rio Branco for almost 40 years. It's unheard of in Brazilian soccer, someone working that long, that has that longevity working with one soccer team. And he worked with Rio Branco since the mid 70s as first as a water boy, like somebody who pick up balls, and then he was promoted to equipment manager and has been equipment manager ever since. I guess the late 70s, early 80s, and then some people say he's one of the best in his business. I know some stories that he was offered jobs from Sao Paulo and other teams that he wanted to stay at Rio Branco because he loved the team, he loved the city, and he was with Rio Branco on the good times and the bad times, and and the good, and I mean the at least we can feel good that his last tournament he finished his job as Rio Branco equipment manager as a champion, because he was definitely somebody that made a presence. I mean, he Rio Branco was supposed to play in white and in the big game against Jaú in the semifinals, but Rio Branco had more lucky playing black, and he made the referee, he convinced the referee allowing the change from white to black. That made an impact on the field. So that story sums up how important Fish Cat was for Rio Branco, and his memorial was yesterday at Rio Branco Stadium, and now his legacy will live on. The Rio Broncos locker room is going to be named after him. Definitely, no brainer. Definitely a great homage. So yeah, so definitely was uh, um, very tough to see him go, but I know his legacy will live long.
Absolutely, and I hate that I never got to meet him because he sounded like he was a great man and gave a lot of his life to Rio Bronco, and it's rare to have loyalty because loyalty is hard to come by like that. And I never got to meet the man, but I'm certainly honoring him from here as the lone Rio Bronco American fan. So rest in
And
peace to Fish Cat, and
here his story remind me a lot of the core of American sports, because that kind of thing you see a lot of in American sports. You've seen this, people that work 10, 20, almost 30 years with the same organization, like as equipment manager, as team manager, as like somewhat off the field kind of job. So, see him work every day the way he did with the longevity remind me a lot of those American stories as well.
Oh yeah, I mean it's definitely. I think that's one of the beautiful things about sports, no matter where you are in the world, is the people that you impact. And you know, I don't know how many people in the world know about the Rio Branco Tigers, but it meant the world clearly to that guy, as it meant the world to you. And it's increasingly meaning more and more to me, even from my perch here in Tennessee. So, but clearly, obviously, I'll never have the same connection that he had, being there every day for 40 years. So, I'm glad he went out a champion. And I know he just said he was buried with his medal on, and that's very bittersweet.
Yeah,
And
he'll definitely be missed in Americana, in Rio Branco, but his replacement was somebody that was trained by him for like 10 years. So seeing Val is going to replace him is kind of like his protege. So that's, see, that's good to see his legacy already lived on.
absolutely. And, you know, this episode definitely is for him, but we have reached the end of it here. Um, for Gus Tomazeli and Americana Salad Brazil, I am Nick Hill, live in Chattanooga, Tennessee, United States, for Fish Cat one last time. This is Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports, the only American and Brazilian sports podcast. Have a great weekend and start to your June.